Canaan. You've seen the video just now. I guess it's Animu time now? Let's go. She looks cute. I knew there's an anime about her. Alphard Al-Shua. And the solitary serpent. I've held off on watching it. The snake has lost 8 of its 9 heads. In the Middle East, the snake is seen as an ill omen, and those who take it as their name are said to be both wicked and extremely cunning. Snake? Snake! Sorry, pardon me. So, there's an anime about Canaan. And I've actually watched the first episode years ago. And it didn't interest me at all afterwards. I know. Always watch the first 4 before you judge an anime. I know. But I didn't quite have the time to do that at the time. So I watched the first one and thought, okay, maybe I'll watch that sometime. And I just didn't. I think it was literally 2 years ago? It must have been around the time. Because I already had my new PC. Yeah. And then I play fucking Shibuya Scramble and I don't make the connection that there's someone named Canaan in there until someone makes a comment about how there's an anime about her. And in that moment I knew that it was fate that I didn't watch the anime back then, because it might have had spoiled something about her, since I could have remembered that the aptly named Canaan had white hair and not pitch black dark hair like Alphard. So maybe I would have put together that she's not Alphard way earlier, and it would have spoiled the story for me, honestly. This twist was so good. It made me enjoy the story even more. So anyway, I think it was fate. I'm gonna watch Canaan right after I fully finish 428, and I'm looking forward to it. But for now, if I give in to sentimentality, I will have lost my light all over again. The blue sun rose into the sky. As the girl rushed through the airport, she was met with the intense light of the summery dawn. April 28th, 8:21 AM, Singapore Changi Airport. So it's still 428, but not quite the right location. She let out a weary breath. A shaft of sunlight blazed across her face and she squinted her eyes against the glare. The night had been a long one, and she could feel exhaustion taking hold. She wanted to stop and sink into one of the sofas in the airport lounge, but she didn't have time for that now. Okay, I'm gonna do it like I read Umineko. I'm not gonna read the voice lines. I'll let the characters voice themselves and maybe repeat stuff that's important, or just read the narrator. So what's halva? Also known by other names including halava and haleve, a popular confection throughout the Arab world, typically made with ingredients such as sesame, apricots, or grains netted together with sugar and some type of oil or fat. It is said to have originated in ancient Mesopotamia. Jesus, it has to be old then. It looks nice enough though. I'd try that, I think. Muttering curses that seemed at odds with her young face, the girl wove her way gracefully through the sea of travelers. Nice boots. Time was of the essence. All she had in her hidden back pocket were some dollar bills. The dollar is a unit of currency in several countries, including Canada and Australia, but here it refers to the United States dollar, controlled by the Federal Reserve Bank. At the time of the story, it is frequently used alongside the euro as a standard currency for international transactions. She was just going to have to acquire the gear she needed on site. It galled her to be so under-equipped. The only consolation was that at least she'd been able to arrange for a boarding pass in time. Canaan refocused instantly as an unfamiliar man addressed her in Arabic. Was he a thief or some more dangerous third party? This was a country where both one's money and one's life could easily be at risk. She had one way to find out what kind of threat she was dealing with. Her voice was sweet and girlishly soft, way different than before. The man gasped. He hadn't been expecting this. They hadn't told him what he was really in for. This girl was the natural enemy of the Serpent, a steely soldier in a proxy war, a professional freelancer who took any requests and who always carried out her mission. A mere hour earlier, she'd taken out an armed syndicate 30 members strong. The red flowers of blood left in her wake, a testament to her rumored capabilities. The man was dumbstruck. What kind of twisted fairy tale was this, with mercenaries who looked like sweet little girls? It's an anime! I love it!
Huh? 何? 手配はできなかった?
いや、搭乗は6番ゲートから。パスとチケットなら。
He said hurriedly, the flight is departing from gate 6 if you're looking for a pass and your ticket.
わかってる。右のポケットでしょ。すごいな。渡されるまで気づかなかった。
Oh. So he planted it on her. She kinda noticed, but it took her a while, so I guess he's a pretty good guy as well. The man gasped again. His surprise shifted to caution. With all of the bystanders around, it should have been easy enough to make a handoff without even the recipient ever noticing. He was proud of his skills, but she'd seen right through him.
落ち込まなくていいよ。あなた、入り口で電話をしていた人でしょ?
Man, she sounds edgy.
私はあなただって分かってたのに、渡されるまで気づかなかった。それってすごいことだ。私、あんまり人は尊敬しないんだけど、あなたには本当に感心してる。
She's known since the moment I arrived, he thought. And she hadn't figured it out from his appearance. She just intuited it somehow? Intuit? I don't know. It's the verb of intuition. The past tense verb. She had also immediately sensed that he was ashamed, even though he'd kept his face a perfect blank. I mean, he gasped audibly.
蛇の天敵というのは間違いではなさそうだ。
一度も殺してないのに天敵っていうのはすごく皮肉だ。
First the girl had acted deliberately blaze. Now she was being downright cynical. She's a little unstable and totally adorable. Whoa, dude. He had to remind himself that this was her. How many soldiers must she have killed? How many battlefields had she survived? Hers was the life of a professional assassin. The fact that she had retained apparent normalcy in the midst of such disorder was more than a little unsettling. Yeah, she must be a fucking psychopath. The man was astonished that this was the famed rival of the Serpent. One did not strike at the snake without exceptional cunning and skill. Hers was the perfect camouflage, a mercenary in the guise of a child.
まあ、誤解でもないし、別それで話の裏は取れた。
ああ、確認は取った。大越製薬研究所所長大沢の娘は確かに誘拐されている。こちらのセルの活発化は何らかの陽動と見るべきだ。
Cell activity? In order to avoid being compromised, anti-government organizations that carry out illegal activities as well as terrorist groups frequently organize themselves into smaller subgroups known as cells. Typically only the leader of each cell knows how to contact the upper echelons. Thus, rank-and-file members who are exposed and arrested are incapable of leaking information about the larger organization to outsiders. The name cell is taken from the biological structure. Okay. Ooh. Canaan gritted her teeth. What's wrong? Her latest mission, concluded just an hour ago, had been to meet with this armed group, the Serpent. That was fine. Everything had gone off splendidly without a hitch. The job had been even easier than she'd imagined. There was no cause to get bent out of shape. But the info she'd gotten her hands on had done quite a number on her mood. The Serpent herself is on the move. Japan, Shibuya, Okoshi Pharmaceutical. Possible CIA involvement. Presumed large-scale urban terrorism at work. That message had lifted a veil from her eyes. At long last, Alphard herself was out in the open. The head of the snake, exposed. I do enjoy that music track right now. What a perfect opportunity to cut it off. But of all places to set the stage, Japan? Man, this makes me wish, you know, listening to this music, reading through the story, I wish they would have made a second VN, just 100 hours long, just about Canaan and her shenanigans as an assassin, with nicely hand-drawn backgrounds like that. Not that I didn't enjoy the live action stuff, it was fine, it was even nice and very nice in some places, and the actors were really good in my opinion, but there's just nothing better than a really well-made visual novel, is there? CIA involvement could pose a problem. She wouldn't be surprised if the Serpent had already called itself around the Americans. When it came to the Serpent, not even the US government could be trusted to keep itself free of influence. And the target was Okoshi Pharmaceutical. If that wasn't a sign, she didn't know what was. Was that just a coincidence? No. Allah was Al-Qadir, all-powerful. Yet the girl frowned in disappointment. What need would he have to go so far to pen such a perfect tale? That was a complicated sentence. She had fought such grand acts of fate, were a relic of the distant past. But she could sense its hand in these events. She'd hurried to get the intel confirmed at once and had quickly arranged a flight to Japan. Maybe she was a freelancer, not aligned with any particular organization, but she still had connections. She had many tools in her arsenal. People were often the most convenient. If they excelled at what they did, so much the better. Many individuals sought to curry her favor. Sympathizers like the man who'd made the handoff here, who would intervene on her behalf. Groups or individuals, activists who favor a particular political organization or ideology. Okay, yeah, whatever.
ありがとう。
She said.
じゃあ行くけど、他に何か言われてる？
現地に一人ワキールを用意した。渋谷への足を用意しているそうだ。着陸後、貨物室から降りられるようになっている。滑走路から直接ハイヤーを飛ばす。
The man said, "What's a wakil?"
無駄足にならないよう祈っているとも。思いのほか、ラフィーク・カナンは我らのアニールから高い信頼と敬愛を受けている。
Again, what's an Amir or Rafiq? They should have made tips for these words.
今回は最悪、痛み分けでいいそうだ。
She sighed. Go down fighting? So it's okay to die as long as I take the target down with me. The man thought of nothing but his honor, his pride. No reconciliation, no negotiation, no submission. 3 tenets that mattered more than preventing bloodshed. Whatever designs these two organizations had on each other were of no concern to her. But even so...
言われなくても、3度目なんて死んでもごめんだ。
How do you die 2 times already? And then a 3rd time. I mean, the first time should be enough. For once, her client's wishes aligned perfectly with her own. Her flaxen hair trailed behind her as she went to board her plane. She didn't look back. So she's blonde, huh? Interesting. I mean, you could tell with the picture and what we've seen in the last episode, but still. The flight from Singapore to Japan was roughly 7 hours. Really? It's that far away still? I thought it would be closer. The Serpent had surely anticipated that her enemy would pursue her there. In all likelihood, there would be a minimal window between Kanan's arrival in Japan and the Serpent's plan coming to fruition.
ほんと、少年が腐ってる。
The Serpent wouldn't be so clumsy as to let someone from back home in the Middle East, especially a foe like Canaan, find out about this by accident. If she'd let the plan leak, that meant that it suited her purposes somehow. It would seem she wanted to entice Canaan to risk hope before trampling her underfoot. You won't lay a finger on me. The voice sneered at her, a backstage murmur in her mind. She dealt with the enemy's diversion, learned of the plan just in the nick of time, and rushed off to Japan without a second's hesitation. Japan was where it would all be decided. If she didn't do battle with the Serpent, she would lose yet another close friend. Had the Serpent engineered this situation simply to torment her?
けど、今回は少し予定が違う。渋谷の文字は、お前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
Interesting. She spoke to herself to calm her gnawing impatience. The time it took to write Shibuya and the time it took to write Alphard were nearly the same, but the youthful and complex nature of the city of Shibuya won out. Her instincts were something akin to fortune-telling, a tendency to reimagine the world around her in a way that was neither wishful thinking nor sour grapes. She had a sense of conviction that hovered near the truth, but she knew she couldn't let herself be optimistic. The serpent possessed a powerful venom. It was possible that, even if Alphard's plan were foiled, the life Canaan hoped to save would still be lost. There truly was no time to spare. Crushing the fringe group in Singapore had gone more quickly than she'd anticipated. She had planned on obliterating them at the break of dawn, but she had been struck by a sudden, familiar sense of urgency and had acted an hour ahead of schedule. That change of plans had led to this. She had obtained the intel just slightly earlier than Alphard might have anticipated, and had put speed above all else in arranging the trip to Japan. I think this is what actually really did work out in her favor then. Right now, she could only hope that the single hour she'd bought herself would let her save a friend's life.
Maria.
In the end, it didn't quite work out, right? She didn't make an appearance until the very end, where Alphard was already in custody, quote unquote. A warm red flooded her mind. They'd met 2 years ago. She remembered the day as an ordinary one, an unassuming tourist was getting hassled by the same sorts of guys that caused trouble all over the world. Canaan's stash of her favorite snack had just run out, and it left her in an irritable mood. Maybe that was why she'd stopped at the sight of the scuffle. Not that she had any interest in helping. The men just gave off an eyesore of a color. Their scent was far too noisy, and she wanted to be rid of them. Shukran jazilan, said the grateful tourist, her hand outstretched. Oh, it's Maria saying this, not one of them. I don't know what this means, by the way. She asked if Canaan would be her guide, which Canaan tried to ignore, but the young woman persisted. This girl was a person raised in peace from a peaceful country. Canaan wasn't the kind to hold it against her, or rail against the unfairness of the world. It didn't mean she wanted to put up with it either. Yabania, like her, was practically a different species. How could they even understand each other? Canaan was closer to an animal, herself, and respectable people didn't get close to animals that were still untamed. Humans had overcome their feral side. They had become creatures of intellect. When such intellect was fostered over the years, the benefits were clear. And yet... This tourist approached her, oblivious. Canaan could recall the warm color from the moment. It still triggered her memories. She's recalling all of this, like colors. It's a weird way to put it, I think, but it's interesting. It was a pleasant color, one that she had been touched by before. This tourist, Maria, was not so remarkable as to draw the eye. Nothing about her seemed especially worthy of admiration. She is pretty beautiful. I mean, just objectively. There was just something special about the wholesome smile she offered. Yes, I think it's the smile that does it. To the dangerous creature she should never have approached. Yeah, something pure in her, right? Canaan smiled. There was something powerful about people who couldn't get a read on their own situation. Like puppies. It was the first time she'd smiled earnestly in a long while, the first time since she'd lost her light a second time. Who did she lose? I think her saying that she died isn't really that she died. Oh, look at her, she's cute. I think it's that she lost people close to her and interpreted it as dying. It would still be several hours before the plane landed in Japan. She did her best to ease her inner tension, to let herself rest in preparation for combat. Her orders were simple. Save her friend, capture the serpent. The objective was the same as it had been before. I do wonder what came first, the Canaan anime or the 428 game? Can anyone tell me? That summer, 4 years ago, when she'd gotten the tattoo on her left arm. Oh, that very long day when she'd been reborn as the Canaan she was now? The tattoo, yeah, it has some significance, right? This other dude also had the same tattoo. They all had the same. All of the syndicate in the beginning had this tattoo, I think. This Al Caravan dude also had it. And he seemed pretty important in the beginning, at least. So, did they work in the same syndicate or something? Or I don't know. Does it have any other significance? I guess we'll find out, maybe? Maybe not, who knows, maybe it's a red herring. It's a pretty peaceful landscape. The rumbling of a diesel engine sounded in her ears. The color that went with that sound indicated that the engine was running well. Is she remembering back, I guess? That's a memory, I think, because suddenly we're in a train, not in an airplane anymore. The interior of the compartment was rife with the smell of Ramal. Ramal F? Sand? What? A dangerous blue, a gentle red, a painful yellow. She's weird, why does she put everything in colors? Those, the colors of the many people aboard the train as it chugged along. The train had set out from Al-Haditha, northwest of Baghdad, and after a journey of 300 kilometers, it was approaching the Jordan border. At the front of the train was an antique diesel locomotive. Man, I love those. This was followed by first-class carriages, coach-class carriages, and also several of the women-only carriages unique to the Middle East. It was a long train, though not exceptionally so. In some Islamic countries, where men and women are prohibited from sitting together for religious reasons, okay, women-only train cars are common. Depending on the country, sexual segregation may be so strict as to apply even to children. Sometimes even young boys must separate from their mothers in order to ride in men-only carriages. Interesting, I didn't know that. It was remarkable that there was a line running between Iraq and Jordan. I don't know, I guess it's Jordan, right? Traffic between the two countries, especially via railway, had been drastically reduced as a result of war. Many of the lines had long since fallen into disuse, but now that the West was working towards the reconstruction and stabilization of Iraq, Japan had also helped plan a railway between Iraq and Jordan and had laid down a temporary rail line. Is this real? Did Japan really do that? Do they have any agenda in that? I mean, what did they get out of this? I know that obviously America is fussing around in the Middle East, but why Japan of all countries? The train's final stop was not the border, but 300 kilometers beyond it, in Amman, the Jordanian capital. This trip would be a turning point. Sundown would see the venerable old train service come to an end. The compartment where Canaan rode was boisterous with noise and human energy. Wind and the sound of chugging wheels rushed in together through windows with no glass. As the only rail service currently linking Iraq and Jordan, the new line drew passengers from all walks of life. A freelance journalist returning from Baghdad, an Indian peddler carrying a piece of luggage larger than himself, a group of women who appeared to be members of some Scandinavian NGO. Okay, no one seemed bothered by the clamor. The passengers shouted and prattled on as they pleased. Oh, various sounds, miscellaneous colors, profuse scents, myriad textures, manifold flavors. All of these sensations mixed together as if in a stew pot, and Canaan gulped them down. Is this some kind of... I know that some people taste color, and I think it's linked with... Is it linked with savant autism or just regular autism? But some people taste color. Or, you know, it's they mix senses, which is weird in itself. So I guess Canaan also does this? Yet the stimulation they provided was weak. It was like lamb without enough salt, and so she reached into her pocket for a dose of her favorite pick-me-up, crunching it between her teeth. A pocky? Canaan was in a foul mood. She was on this train to do a job, but nothing had happened for 3 hours now. So far the journey had proceeded without incident, and she'd had no opportunity to act. Siam, the man she called Sharik, had assigned her to this mission. They were traveling together. Theirs was a rare team. No longer were they Mudarib and Mutadarib, oh fuck me, master and student. They were partners now. Still, this was a complete letdown. The atmosphere on the train set her on edge. Despite the instability of present-day Iraq, there were no soldiers aboard, only several policemen. Supposedly, this limitation of the military presence was all out of concern for the complicated political situation, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was more a concern for saving money on soldiers' pay. The major powers touted peace while enforcing virtue, when they could be bothered. This railway was just one more example of their dubious policies, supposedly established to help foster interpersonal exchange and economic revitalization. It had originally been used for military transport until public travel was more useful for somebody's agenda.
退屈。善意の国際協力ってものが本当にあるなんて思ってもみなかった。これの持ち主はよっぽど平和で幸せなんだな、シャム。
ひねくれているな。善意の第三者は信用ならないか、カナ。
Her companion said, he has an awesome voice, really deep. I wish I had a voice like that.
別に信用なんてシャムしかできない。そういうのが相手なら仕事はいつも楽だろうなと思っただけ。嫌ってるわけじゃない。
She sounds like a tsundere.
結構襟好みがないのはいいことだ。だが善意と私欲どちらが組みやすいかは仕事の内容によるな。善意には損得がない分人間らしい交渉が通じない。それはそれで厄介だぞ。
Guess he's the one who taught her the ways of the assassin, right? Virtue, Canaan sniffed. Virtue was just another name individuals gave to their own biased sense of justice. A rigid and fanatical concept subject to any number of arbitrary beliefs. One man's virtue was another man's depravity. The very idea made her think of those interminable meetings between political factions. People puffed themselves up as wise and sat at the conference table without the slightest interest in the other side's values. To them, all that mattered was what they had already decided was good and right.
損得がないね。どうすれば利益が出るのか、どうすれば生き残れるか分かってるのに、目先のお金には転ばないってこと？もっと派手に人生そのものをつまずき続ける？
客観的に見れば安酒のようなものだ。それは手に入れやすく悪酔いしやすい。
That's an interesting point.
泥酔している人間に話し合いは期待できない。説得するより先にまず荒ごとで酒を抜かなきゃならん。
It's such a fitting metaphor. I don't know.
例えば、眉間を秒速で打ち抜いて。
まあ頭にアルコールが詰まっているかは疑問だが。
The man named Siam curled up the corners of his mouth. Though he wasn't a fundamentalist Muslim, he still detested alcohol as a tool of the devil. But his use of booze as a metaphor now was inspired less by his inner demons than by his unique sense of humor.
もう笑わない方がいいって言ったのに。シャム笑うと顔が怖いんだから。
Oh jeez. Harsh, yes, but it needed to be said. Siam's smile was a rare bird newly come to roost. The two had known each other for several years now. Back in the day, she had never known him to smile. As a change of habit, it felt unsettlingly like a sort of surprise attack.
知っている。そう忠告されて以来、笑わないよう努めていた。
Man, it must have hurt.
まあ、俺たちの雇い主は苦行を美徳としている。笑わないというのは方針に合っているだろう。
Canaan herself was equally guilty of a rare display. Her own sour expression had completely turned around. The only time she expressed human-like joy was when she and Siam were alone together. Her name was Canaan. Trained by Siam, a veteran mercenary, she had just turned 14 years old. So she's literally a child soldier, I guess. Canaan was not her real name, but the nickname given to her 2 years prior. Hers was a familiar story, that of a child who had lost her parents and her village to the ravages of war. Unlike most who shared such a beginning, however, she'd had two major strokes of luck. The first was the ability she had been born with. The second was that she'd met someone who taught her how to foster that ability. What ability? As a girl orphaned by war, she had almost inevitably taken up arms. Making herself useful to the powers that surrounded her had been the only way to survive. That's horrible. The only people she could depend on. The only ones who gave her anything were them? The moment she didn't meet their expectations, she would go back to being a mere orphan. And so this girl, a victim of war, fell under the protection of the warmongers and was trained to be one of their soldiers. But then, she was picked up by a man, Siam, who freed her from those who had robbed her of her past. He had no ideology. He was unlike the others she had known in her broken world. The wandering people who had formed a new nation to be their promised land, and the ones they had driven out, now wanderers themselves, styled themselves liberators. Siam was a mercenary who had been hired by those would-be liberators, but he paid no heed to the ideologies of either side. He was a soldier who lived to fight, knowing he was unlikely to see the conflict's end during his lifetime. Canaan didn't know how long Siam had been working as a mercenary. Is it Siam or Siam? By the time she'd wound up in his care, he was already a veteran worthy of her confidence. He told her that he'd been kicked out of the army, that he preferred solo missions where he could focus on his objective without worrying about fellow operatives. In that sense, he was something closer to an agent provocateur than an ordinary mercenary. Siam was well aware of his distinct style and position. He sometimes revealed a hint of shame at the fact that the assignments he was giving were not officially missions, muhima, but instead were referred to as jobs, eamar. Interesting. Still, he was known as a valuable asset on the Liberation Front. They were a guerrilla organization facing off against superior Israeli forces. A lone mercenary who could carry out major operations by himself, he had fit in well with the guerrilla strategy. The fact that he was disposable if and when the time came was also quite appealing. Oh, he can turn voices on and off, interesting. And Canaan, once Siam took her in, had grown not as a soldier, but as a specialized covert operative. That was a good fortune. The orphan's talents weren't particularly well suited to acting as a part of a unit. She was far better at being a solo diversionist acting against the enemy organization. And so she had ceased to be a soldier, instead training as a diversionist. She fulfilled her new role adeptly. Siam and Kanna, they worked in concert as secret agents, infiltrating, gathering intel, conducting sabotage. She'd learned to operate without backup. Typically, one of the duo would sneak into enemy territory alone, while the other acted in a logistics or liaison role. Here and now, however, with the objective aboard this moving train, responding to an urgent request from the employer, the two were working together as a team.
でも、列車で輸送するってそんなに大きなものなの？今回のは。
いや、物自体は個人で所有できる大きさらしい。
So they're looking for an object, huh?
中身は俺たちの管轄ではない。事実としてそれがあるかないかの確認が先だ。
Ooh, okay.
なんだ、それならもう終わりだ。私とシャムで見て回ったんだから間違いないよ。この列車は外れ。どこをどう見ても普通の車両だし、おかしな手触りもないし。
It doesn't feel wrong? What?
輸送の予定が1日ずれたか、こっちの動きが漏れたか。そもそも初めからそんな計画はなかったってとこじゃない？
いや、今回の情報に限って空振りはない。信用できる提供者だからな。
They'd received the intelligence just 2 days prior. Even by their own fast-moving standards, this job was inordinately rushed. A member of American military deployed in Iraq has contacted a Mossad agent. Indications suggest a plan to deliver and hand over a weapon. Mossad is the secret agency of Israel, I think, right? Yeah, the Israeli Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, yeah. Board Iraq-Jordan railway and gather intel, recover payload if possible, destroy if not. Weapon to be transferred, enemy escort and loaded, all unknown. No logistical support will be provided during operation. It was uncertain why the enemy had chosen to move the mystery weapon along such a dangerous overland route. But the information came from a source that both Siam and the Liberation Front trusted absolutely. And the source had made it clear that the enemy forces were in a hurry to transfer this unknown new weapon. This was a tip that the Liberation Front could not overlook, and they directed Siam to act immediately. The situation was somewhat delicate because the enemy had decided to use a train that crossed the border as their means of transport. Given the tenuous political balance in the region, the Liberation Front couldn't risk open military action targeting an international train running from Iraq to Jordan. Political pressure from Israel and the US might have led to the Jordanian government to give tacit consent to a weapons transfer. But if the freedom fighters intervened on a large scale, it would surely invite a military response. Worst case, things might spiral out of control and trigger yet another full-scale war in the Middle East. Man, that would indeed be the worst case scenario. Thus, the job at hand required utmost secrecy. The enemy would disavow involvement in any clandestine transport, and those who moved against him must be similarly able to deny any involvement. Stopping and destroying the secret payload was a job for covert agents. And so Siam and Kanna had hurriedly boarded a train, where they'd been spending their time staring out the window. What if they're in another compartment? 4 hours had passed without any incident aboard. Now they were arriving at the halfway point in their journey, the Jordanian border. Okay, interesting. Man, this indeed feels like it could be its own game, right? And I would play that. There, abruptly, things began to change. Without warning, the train, which had hit her to seemed like a promise of safe passage, grew thick with the dangerous scent of an escort convoy. I like how she disappeared, Jesus.
台車の変更？何それ？そんなの聞いてないし、聞いたこともないよ、シャム。
レール幅の問題だ。これまでレールはスタンダードゲージだが、ここからはロシアの援助で敷設された幅 1524mm のブロードゲージが残っているんだろう。
Okay, railway track with a 1435mm space between the rails. It is a standard in the United Kingdom where it originated, and due to internationalization, an estimated 60% or more of the world's railways use standard gauge. Interesting. And next is the broad gauge. Railway with tracks spaced farther apart than standard gauge. The broader gauge offers some advantages such as improved stability for cars and better resistance to crosswinds. Russia, India and Finland are among the countries that use broad gauge, along with some parts of Spain. I never knew there would be a difference in that.
レール幅が異なる路線を運行する列車は1両ずつ車体を持ち上げ台車ごと車輪を付け替える。
Jesus, this is crazy. This must take time and effort and money. Wouldn't it be easier to install new rails or something? Imagine doing this every time the train has to cross. The wheel exchange made for an extended delay. Each car in turn had to be removed from its couplings. Then each car was loaded onto a lift and refitted for the broad gauge tracks.
手間がかかるね。
Canaan
走
grumbled.
れないなら、ここから走れる列車に乗り換えればいいの。
You're right, this would make more sense. Build a fucking station in the middle and then board another train.
ダイヤの遅延に文句を言うほど裕福な乗客はいないさ。荷物を改められるわけでもない。列車も乗客も無事目的地に着けるのならそれでいい。
そう。確かにいちいち文句を言うほど余裕はないよね。私たち。けどシャム。
Canaan sensed there was more going on than just the switching of the train's wheels. The train was being expanded. A freight car, clearly meant to carry goods of higher quality, was being added, sandwiched between a new pair of passenger cars. A total of 3 new cars were added. The only passengers in the 2 compartments surrounding the freight car were armed soldiers. Oh, it has to be something important.
1車両に7人。合わせて14人。これも予定にあった。
Now, her saying they're all the same shade of blue, this is so weird. Can she see them? Is she seeing them weirdly or something?
いや、ここまでは考えもしなかった。貨車の増設か。あからさまだが事前対応は難しいな。
We were seeing a complex plan unfold, one that would be traceable after the fact, but which might be impossible to stop while it was in motion. They now faced a significant force of enemies that they might have to neutralize using only the firepower they had on their persons. Based on the orders Siam had received, there was 0 chance they'd receive any backup.
あいつらが兵士なのは間違いないけど、どこの所属かまでは見えないよ。
彼らが乗客に偽装した兵士であり、貨車が加わったのなら問題ない。イスラエル側の兵士かどうかは貨車の中身が証明してくれるさ。
そっか。今わかるのは、私たちのことはバレてないってことか。連中、安全だと判断したからことに出たんだよね。
そういうことだ。問題は。
The freight car transfer cast everything into doubt. It seemed to confirm that there was indeed a weapons delivery taking place, but recovering the payload was going to be more difficult than anticipated. The train transfer process finished without a hitch. The other passengers paid it little heed. Evidently, they were accustomed to this sort of delay.
強引な計画だね。おかげで応援を呼ぶことも装備の補充もできなかった。後先考えてない計画はやっぱり独特の善意から来るもの。
まあ周りが見えてないあたり強硬派らしいと言えなくもない。
At last, the train left the border behind. There were no planned stops between the frontier and Amman. Canaan and Siam needed to complete the job before the train arrived in Amman, which meant within the next 4 hours. The odds were 2 against 14. A difference of power so great seemed absurd even to consider a plan of attack.
ザイームの配置ミスだよ、シャム。2人でやる仕事じゃない。あからさまに来るならいっそ爆破すればいい。停車中にセムテックスでも仕掛ければよかったんだ。
Given how black things are. Again, she's describing stuff with color. A plastic explosive developed in Czechoslovakia. It is clay-like and easily formed into different shapes. A similar type of explosive, Composition 4, C4, used by the US Armed Forces, is perhaps more famous. It is used by many military organizations due to its durability and ease of transport. Semtex, never heard of it.
乱暴だが効率的だな。俺たちの仕事が殲滅ならそれで行きたいところだな。
They had checked the cars pretty thoroughly before they departed. Sneaking something aboard a freight car would probably have been close to impossible.
じゃあどうするの？正面から14人はちょっときついよ。
いや、そんな賭け事をするまでもない。人手なら増える。もう一人ここで合流する予定だ。
What? Didn't they say that there was no backup?
え？
Canaan was shocked. She felt an unfamiliar kind of fear. As far as she had known, Siam never teamed up with anyone but her. Oh, it's Alphard. It's Alphard, isn't it? It's fucking Alphard.
同席するよ。他の席は男ばかりでどうにも居づらいんでね。
Is it Alphard? I don't know. As soon as the stranger spoke, Canaan saw Siam's color shift to a pale, pale blue. A bad sign. So she repeated. Anyway, I think I got it now. I think I got her. Either it's her ability or it's something, I don't know. She can read people and she puts it in colors. And depending on the colors, it's their mood or their... How do I put this? Whether they're hostile or friendly and stuff? You know? Her voice was low. The muscles in her arms were like taut, like... We're taut like corded rope. There's one like too much in there. To Canaan's eyes, her visage? Her visage, I guess, was a complex melt of shifting colors. So she can see people in colors. That's so weird. It went without saying. This was their sole reinforcements, their third teammate.
構わない。座ってくれ。
どうも。なあ、場所を譲ってくれないか、お嬢さん。子供は保護者の横に座るものだ。その位置は私向けだろ。
That's savage. Throwing some shade here, huh? Canaan sighed.
シャム、お嬢さんは耳が遠い？それともアラビア語はわからない？
カナ、俺の横に座れ。彼女は今回の情報提供者だ。我々の雇い主の一人だ。俺とは古い馴染みでもある。
Wait, what if this really is Alphard? It would mean that Alphard and Canaan were in some kind of friendly relationship once. Maybe it's not, though. Canaan said nothing. But she did get up from her seat and sit next to Siam. Sat next to Siam. She'd do as he asked, although she didn't trust his woman. She didn't like the way he'd said old friend. It brought up all her natural cynicism.
ご挨拶だな。シャム、この子がお前のバックアップか？
いや、今回俺はダーファフだ。こいつはシナーン向けだな。腕は水準以上だが、村っ気がありすぎる。目の前に相手がいないと目を覚まさないのでは、守りは任せられる。
それは。まだ訓練中というわけか。
She reminds me of Shiki. I don't know. Is it the artist? Is it the same? No, it's not, right? It would be Nazu then. Nazu drew. No, it's not Nazu anymore, right? Drawing the Fate stuff and the Tsukihime stuff. Did he draw the Tsukihime stuff? But then another artist took over. So maybe it's the artist that took over then. Oh, what's his name? I can't quite remember it, but she looks definitely similar to the old Fate and Tsukihime art style, doesn't she? The woman regarded Canaan with a cold gaze. She gave the impression of a snake trying to sense the body temperature of potential prey. I agree.
で、その左手は人並みに動くのか。訓練途中のお嬢さんは体の管理もできない半人前。
Canaan glared sidelong at the woman. She wasn't offended by the remark itself. The fact was that her left arm was still in pain. What unsettled her was this woman's powers of perception, able to detect Canaan's injury through the heavy cloak she wore. Okay, what the fuck?
少しすりむいただけ。
そう。ならいいが、原因は傷をつけたのは列車に乗る前か乗った後か。それでお前がまだ半人前の兵士か、ただの間抜けかわかるの？
Canaan did not reply.
だんまりか。おいシャム、どっちなんだ？
It's interesting, they call Siam Shamu, so I guess it's the Japanese pronunciation. He didn't answer. Had she seen something in that silence?
はあ、そういうこと？
The stranger could read Siam's silence better than anyone, better than his own partner. The woman's stoic face grew just a shade brighter. Her smile was entirely sarcastic, but at least it was a display of human emotion. It was a smile as if to say, well done, as if Canaan's injury was some fated thing.
見たところ戦争孤児か。まったく、懲りないなお前も。仕込みは何年になるんだ。
So it's not the first time he did that?
引き受けたのは2年前だ。
2 years ago. 2003. The Middle East, a war orphan. All that information taken together left no question about just what battlefield she'd seen. The Iraq War. She had lived through the long night of a war that for the winning side had been little more than a display of overwhelming resources and overwhelming technology.
安心したよ。半人前だが心構えはあるわけだ。では技術はこれから見させてもらおう。お前が連れてくる以上は一発には鍛えられているだろうしな。
Now that she'd inferred Canaan's background, the woman's enmity seemed to abate. Their initial reluctance to trust each other had apparently been mutual. Canaan wasn't necessarily happy, but if this was the team Siam wanted, she would accept it. As the woman had observed, Canaan had betrayed by Siam after all, and Siam's judgment was absolute. Canaan knew him as an instructor and mentor, the ideal soldier, utterly reliable. She turned her gaze away from the woman and looked out the window. The passing scenery drew out her memories of the life she'd lived over the past few years. A flashback? In a flashback? Really? A girl who had lost all her relatives to war. The tale of a child who had never held a gun before, becoming a full-fledged soldier at the heels of a veteran mercenary. All of it came hazily drifting back into her mind. All the life I'd had before was taken away by the war. The echoing of gunfire in the distance, the sound of buildings ablaze. I couldn't help but think how much smaller and simpler those sounds were than I'd imagined them to be from stories. No place had seemed safer to me than my house, and it was reduced to ruin by a single artillery shell. A few moments after that blast, a group of strange men came barging in. I could hear their heavy footsteps, their coarse voices muttering. They're dead, we've killed them. Luckily for me, my father had been thinking quickly and had sent me into the basement. Unluckily, he and my brothers were still in the living room when the blast hit. It wasn't just furniture that was now gone without a trace. I sat in the basement, thinking. From the men's conversation, I realized that they were looking for my father's corpse, my older brothers, and my own. I can remember every word those soldiers said. Something had clicked in my mind as I listened. I committed to memory how many men there were, what their voices sounded like, what names they called one another, so that I would never, ever forget. Focused on hearing the every word for the next hour, I felt neither fear nor boredom. I gathered that there was no trace of my father's body, but I had found my older brothers. Satisfied, the soldiers left. All of this happened when I was 12 years old. Trapped under the rubble, it was days before I was rescued. I'd lost my family and any place to belong. The adults who found me realized that I'd suffered emotional scarring, but they didn't have the time to bother with that. They're dead. We've killed them. Ah, yes. There are too many things one needs to do in life. In my case especially, I expect I'm going to be overworked. It was quite simple, the reason I took up arms. It was not atonement that I sought, but equal compensation for what I'd lost. Unjust usurpers. Deeds whose cost was reckoned in blood. I have still not been paid what I am owed. The balance must be settled. I only ask as much as they took from me. That is why I carry on, never resting, with the relentless precision of a machine. It is simply a tale of sorrow, giving way to resentment, giving way to cold reason. Was it odd that I never felt malice? Perhaps I could see too clearly. I could see things on a broader scale than others. Could see where the evil was, where the flaws were. Could see it all so clearly that I was dumbstruck into sheer objectivity. The weak are evil. My family, my father, people I should have been proud of, had too many flaws. People of conscience who esteemed a righteous society, who embraced complicated and contradictory things, who tried to become good sheikhs. An Arabic word denoting the leader of a tribe or a wise man, an honorary term of respect for someone who commands trust. In the modern day, it is often used to refer to scholars, community representatives, and people in high-ranking management positions. Okay. Their many failings created enemies, invited war, and brought on their defeat. Violence was a vulgar thing, far beneath the cultured behavior of my father and brother, but it still had the final word over them in the end. We may have been cruel to those who would shame us, yet we had tolerated too many of these foreign invaders. Balance is key. One must clad oneself in complexities, yet be simple at the core. Taking action always requires a first step. If someone takes from you, you take it back. If they kill you, you kill them back. Action and reaction. We should have fought more simply. By perceiving everyone different than ourselves as our enemies, we brought on the war long before it was inevitable. Even if my father and brother had been operating in a vacuum, they probably would have done the same. But every family has so many kin to hold dear, so many others who cloud their perspective. Except for me. Ha! My family and my kin are utterly gone. Apart from the determination I already possessed, I knew I needed to hone myself. My growing skills as a soldier were necessary for me to achieve my goals, and more basically, necessary for me even to survive. My goals. In the beginning, that was all I really thought about. Once I'd become an orphan, I resolved not to rely on anyone. My trauma wouldn't let me trust anyone else. And yet, eventually, I wound up feeling a sense of trust for this man who found me and committed 2 years to training me. It was something I'd never thought I'd feel again.
素人を鍛えられるほど気の長い奴はここにはいないそうだ。適任ではないがお前には俺がつくことになった。
Siam was always more freelancer than soldier. He belonged to a liberation movement, but he made his living taking on jobs as a reliable mercenary. I guess his role gave him a lot of freedom, because unlike a grunt who simply fired guns, he was allowed to act as a sort of instructor. He had no close ties within his organization, which was convenient for me. I'd taken up arms not because of any ethnic conflict, but for my own personal cause.
教官としての報酬を受け取ってはいるが、これは本契約ではない。時間の無駄は互いのためにもならない。お前に適合性がないと判断すれば、その時点で契約を切る。
Luckily for me, Siam ignored my unique background and upbringing, and simply trained me to be a fighter, growing as an instructor along the way.
銃は性能を裏切らない。オートマチックは兵士の戦闘能力を平均化する。 持つ側の技術が水準に達してしまえば、誰も彼も同じことしかできないようになっている。逆を言えば、現在の水準に達していない銃を選んだ者は真っ先に振るい落とされる。
So he's basically saying, bring the right tool for the job, right?
お前が初めに覚えることは、手にしたものが良質か粗悪かを測る術であり。
Maybe it's a metaphor for him training her. Guns are simple, not nearly as complicated as people. You just pull the trigger. My father had handled weapons occasionally, but never showed me how to use one. Political struggle was his preferred form of conflict, and in the end, it was that bias that defeated him. I took up guns to avoid repeating his mistake, but also the feel of a metal grip in my hands seemed to suit me. At least that was how it always felt to me. Maybe my fondness for weapons was deliberately ingrained into me by Siam's instruction.
女であることを忘れるな。どれほど優れた才能であろうと体格は変えられない。複数の敵と拳銃で撃ち合うときは、最も近くにいる敵に向けて2発撃ち込む。命中していなくても、足指の付け根を軸に向きを変え次の敵を撃て。敵を接近させるな。
It's interesting advice. I mastered the basics that first year. I say this not out of any excess pride or self-confidence, but I was measurably the best of the soldiers other than Siam himself. After that, Siam and I began working jobs together. Siam was against it at first, but I had the ability, and he at least had the objectivity to acknowledge that fact. He was an exceptional teacher, and I was an even more exceptional student. I was an ideal subordinate, and inhuman competent, willing to use whatever I deemed useful to get an edge. I had countless brushes with death out on the battlefield. The reality of war is that people die regardless of their tech, their experience, their abilities. It's random chance sometimes. I ought to have accepted that reality when I lost my family, but it was the battlefield that made the truth completely clear. The society into which I'd been born seeks to assign value not just in monetary terms, but for individual dignity and even ideologies. But only death is truly impartial. I was able to survive through all of this largely thanks to Siam's aptitude. He wound up protecting me countless times when my inexperience put me into peril. His intervention was not out of any fondness for me, but rather a cool calculation in the interest of completing the mission. He knew I could be counted on. Never much to look at, he accrued even more scars in the course of rescuing his risk-prone student. There was almost no place that he hadn't been shot, except, somehow, in the head. Maybe there was a trick to that? I'd wanted to ask him, secretly, but there was no allowance for questions while he was my shield. I could only make such small talk once his time as my protector had come to an end. And even then, up until this very moment, it had never been a good time to ask. I had just wound up believing that Siam would never die, that no matter how many times people opened fire on him, he simply wouldn't get hit where it really mattered. That was all probably a delusion on my part, of course, but the fact was that he just didn't die. Of course his heart had already died sometime before. Bullets couldn't kill someone who was already dead. He deserved my trust. We were of the same breed, he and I. Siam would always have my back, no question.
稀に超人的な兵士が現れる。この先長く傭兵を続けていれば、そういう旗迷惑なものに出会うだろう。
My training was complete. I was no longer a student but a mercenary, and this is what Siam had to tell me? I responded with sarcasm. What was this? Some Hollywood script? Siam had never really joked with me before.
いや、SF ではなく現実の話だぞ。
There's always someone bigger than you.
兵士同士の戦闘、個人装備の性能の向上は頭打ちだ。戦場において一個の兵士は均等に死んでいく。次は俺のターン、その次はお前のターンといった風にだ。だが中にはその平等を覆す怪物がいる。
Siam went on to tell a story of two soldiers, one wielding a revolver and one an automatic handgun. The wildly anachronistic revolver was no match for the automatic. Even disregarding magazine size, a higher rate of fire meant superior firepower, period. A machine pistol capable of firing 3-round bursts would turn the revolver user into Swiss cheese.
そう、リボルバーとオートでは話にならない。それが俺たちの認識であり、同時に兵士としての限界でもある。
Siam went on. talking about how similar weapons could equalize the abilities of soldiers, and about those who had removed that collar from themselves and deviated from that equilibrium. For instance, the unparalleled gunfighter capable of rapid fire like that seen in a Hollywood western, a type of character who'd actually existed. Experts who could fan the hammer, unloading 5 shots at the target in the span of a single second. Damn, that's impressive. Of course, simply rapid fire alone wasn't worth fearing, it had to be accompanied by the skill to put it on target. Siam had probably just been trying to offer an explicit example of a time when exceptional human skill could surpass the capabilities of the available hardware. It had all seemed too fantastical, but he had been dead serious. Apparently he'd run across such rule breakers in the past.
生まれついての戦争や重機の申し子、強運の塊、我々とは違う身体の機能、そういったものを持つ超人は稀に現れる。身体機能に天性の差があるのは言うまでもないが、その才能がピタリと戦争に符合する幸運な兵士。戦場でのみ人間の規格から逸脱し、一個の兵士では起こし得ない戦果を上げるもの。
Still, even according to Siam, such Superman could only deal with 3 or 4 opponents within any given moment. So, assuming he had 5 or more to attack them in that moment, there'd be no problem taking them down. I was relieved. He wasn't talking mere fiction, but he also wasn't just telling some joke. So then what was his story all about?
お前は超人ではないが、極限ではある。それを自ら承知しているのも知っている。だからこそ気をつけろ。5体の境界を誤らず、己の才能に頼るな。お前は完成されている。自分の性能を正しく把握しているのなら、決して破れることはない。
Thus did Siam acknowledge my ascendance to the status of a warrior. It was an achievement to be proud of, to be seen as his sole peer as a combatant, perhaps even as better. More than anything, the esteem I held for Siam was a reflection of the esteem he showed me. We were the same. That's why, when the time came, I had scarred my left arm. I wanted a physical symbol of our connection. That's why she tattooed herself, or what? Introductions were a simple affair. Siam had no need to give his name. Canaan had no interest in the woman's, and the woman seemed satisfied with what she knew of the other two.
呼び方はシャムとお嬢さんでいい？
問題がないのなら、そちらの今の名前は？
He shrugged.
ん？ああ、連携は必要だな。カナンというのはどうだ？
What? I thought Canaan was her name. Canaan couldn't suppress the sound of irritation. She tugged wordlessly on Siam's coat, like a pouting cat, staking a claim to what it wanted for its own.
すまない。それは問題がある。
Siam replied, Is this a common name? In Arabia and stuff? In Iraq, maybe? Canaan?
冗談だよ。今はサダカで通している。
Sadaka. In Islam, this refers to the act of giving spontaneous, voluntary charity to the needy. It is distinct from zakat, a form of obligatory almsgiving. Sadaka, so being nice, I guess. Giving spontaneous, voluntary charity to the needy. Interesting that there's a name for that.
それじゃ、そろそろ本題に入ろうか。
So is this Alphard or not? I still don't know. Sadaka explained how the job would unfold. They'd wait until the train had traveled for an hour beyond the border before moving against the objective. Hopefully they could finish the mission an hour before their arrival in Amman. Canaan peered at Siam's face as he and Sadaka spoke. His color was, as always, blue. That shift earlier to an unluckier color, the cloudy whiteness of an unfamiliar stranger, had lasted only for a moment.
目的となる貨物車両は3両目。その前後である第2と第4車両にはそれぞれ7人ずつ護衛が配置されている。うち第4車両の2人は定期的に後部車両の見回りをするようだ。
She explains.
そら、噂をすれば。
Without even shifting her gaze, Canaan could confirm the presence of 2 soldiers moving through the car in which she sat. 2 blue blotches passing by, the color of alert escorts. A rending, inorganic blue. The color of fighters skilled in the use of the guns they carried. People who wear this color usually rub Canaan the wrong way. Just being near them made her uncomfortable. Siam was a contradictory counterexample. Despite his dangerous hue, he eased her nerves. But whether the colors expressed themselves as painful or gentle didn't mean anything. The colors were merely colors. Whether warm or cold, everything was done neatly in simple colors, as if painted with run-of-the-mill materials. I don't get her fucking ability.
同じく貨物列車だが、こちらに積まれているものは至って健全な物資だ。最悪の場合、ここに籠城できないこともない。まあ、催涙弾の一つでも投げ込まれればおしまいだがね。
いや、交戦は避ける。
Siam said.
目撃者も犠牲者も出すなというのがオーダーだろう。
ことは秘密裏に。連中が私たちに気づくのは列車がアンマンに到着し、何もかも立ち去った後か。いいね。それは私の注文通りだ。
では確認する。
Siam replied.
輸送の真偽は明らかになった。我々の目的はこれの奪還に移行する。変更点は？
ない。スポンサーとして同志の行動に期待し、また私もこれに参加する。
It had been just over 5 hours since they boarded the train. Canaan felt a sense of relief that at long last the action she'd been anticipating would finally commence. The objective was to recover the parcel in the freight car towards the front section of the train. They would infiltrate the car without alerting the guards, acquire the payload and then disembark from the train as if they were just normal passengers. Top priority was acquiring the item. Secrecy was secondary. If it turned out that they needed to take the payload by force, they'd been given permission to initiate combat. Violence was definitely on the table. If it came to that. If they were detected, it'd wind up in a 3-on-14 shootout aboard the train.
OK。
Canaan
私と
said.
シャムの役割はわかる。けどこの女は何をするんだ。そもそもどうしてスポンサーが出向いてくる。
彼女の専門は暗号破りだ。
Oh, this sounds like Alphard, alright.
本来なら別の人間を手配するんだが、急な話だったからな。昨日の時点で合流できる専門職は彼女しかいなかった。
暗号破りってそれなら。
Oh, is she gonna backstab them and kill Siam or something? And this is what sets Canaan off as on her fucking revenge journey?
そうすねるな。この道ではこいつは一流だ。お前もいい経験になるさ。
随分とらしくないな、シャム。
Sadaka said.
カナンという子供にほだされたというのは本当だったか。
人一倍手がかかっているだけだが、そんな話が触れ回っているのか。
いいや、我々がカナンという優秀な人材を手に入れたという。私もまさかこんなお嬢さんとは思っていなかったが。
私もお前みたいな女がスポンサーとは知らなかった。知ってたら2年もいなかった。
それは違うな。私は多くの支援者のうちの一人だよ。指導者じゃない。だいたい一紛争に本腰を入れるほど暇じゃないんだ。
そのくせこんな仕事に顔を出してるじゃないか。
別件で近くに来ていてね。そのついでだよ。今回はネタがネタだし、無視するわけにもいかんだろう。
すればよかったのに。こんなの私とシャムだけで十分だ。
The enmity between the two had become like a steady rhythm, driving along their conversation. It did make them interesting to listen to, for better or for worse.
定か。その別件とは何か問題でも。
ほう。
Canaan was intrigued. Siam wasn't the kind of person to ask irrelevant questions. Had he twigged something that might affect the mission? Whatever the case, Sadaka smiled pleasantly.
プロジェクトの一つに問題が出てきてね。人材の調査と兵器の不具合の2点だ。そうだな。例えば、お前が懐に飲んでるものは殺傷能力が高い武器という触れ込みだが、 当たったのに効果がないとクレームがあったとしたらどうだ？
They're not talking about weapons. I think they're talking about people. And honestly, I think Sadaka is talking about Siam. I think they want to get rid of him or something.
何それ？そんなの不具合どころの話じゃない。れっきとした欠陥商品じゃないか。
ああ、その通りだお嬢さん。今まで信頼していたものに欠陥があったでは我々の信頼に関わる。
This sentence alone is a dead giveaway that it's something not about a weapon.
無視してもいい不安要素なんだが、取り除けるなら取り除いた方が商品になるからね。現地に行って問題点とやらを確認し、しかるべき対処法を提出する。つまらない仕事さ。近頃はこんな駒遣いばかりだ。コードブレイカーならぬリスクブレイカーというところか。
I love how they say breaker.
そう。偉そうにしてるけど、誰かの駒遣いなのは変わらないんだ。
まったくだ。
Sadaka brushed aside Kanan's insult with an air of confidence. Kanan scowled. The woman was so sure of herself. She turned away and gazed out at the scenery outside, and then she realized the snack she'd been gnawing on was gone.
シャム。
Kanan hissed.
今日は多いな。そんなに不満か？
シャム、
Sadaka
話の途
interjected.
中だが少しいいか？
簡潔に済むのなら。
ああ、さっきから気になっていたんだが、お前の相棒は何を食べている？新手の携帯食か？
Do we really have time for that conversation right now?
そんなものだ。試すか？
What's that? I guess we need a slice of life segment, I guess. Without saying anything, Sadaka took one of the offered treats. She tore open the paper wrapper on one end, then stuck the contents between her teeth like a cigarette, just as Canaan had. Canaan watched her resentfully, knowing what she was tasting. A simple, unpretentious sweetness. The purity of concentrated sugar.
ではなく、そのものだ。
She looks not impressed.
ただの砂糖じゃないかこれ。
So she has just been sucking on sugar?
ああ、シュガースティックを固めたものだ。乾燥して固形化したものを見つけて以来、大のお気に入りでな。今じゃ注射器を使って固形化している。品質で言うなら日本製のものがいいそうだ。
I love how in every story, I now, hear me out, this is a little bit of a, I guess you could call it a rant, but in every story of Japanese origin, no matter where it is set, Germany, Middle East, America, there's always something Japanese. They can't just write a fictional story without any Japanese characters, origins, items, or anything really. Monster, a really good manga. The doctor had to be Japanese. It doesn't matter at all in the story, really. It doesn't matter at all. The whole story takes place in Germany. But the doctor has to be a Japanese guy, for some reason. These guys, they're riding in a train with rails sponsored by Japan, apparently. Eating Japanese snacks. Why? For what fucking reason? I don't get it, but okay. Canaan focused on gnawing her own stick, not really listening to Siam's explanation or my little rant about weird Japanese cliches. There was a brief silence. Sadaka let out a silent sniff.
変わった思考だな。うまいのか？
うん。無駄がないのはすごく美味しい。
Sadaka raised an eyebrow dubiously. It's a weird thing to say. I think Canaan has some kind of weird ability, and I think simple things are easier for her to process. The time had come. They got up from the seats without a sound. Draped in their hoods, Canaan and Sadaka made their way through the train, doing their best to draw no attention. Siam had put together a timeline. They should spend no more than 30 minutes at most on their infiltration. In addition to the soldiers stationed in the passenger cars, it was possible that the enemy had also lookouts disguised as normal passengers. A seat left open for too long might arouse unwanted suspicion. The team needed to sneak onto the freight car, obtain the payload, and return to the seats without a single minute wasted. A shootout is gonna break out. I know, I've seen the preview. Siam was too tall and muscular to be well suited for infiltration. He would hang back and act as the girl's rear guard, and if the operation was discovered, his task would be to secure an escape route for them. Would they jump off the train? Sadaka called in on one of the tiny voice-activated radios that the three carried. She and Canaan prepared to make their way to their final objective in the freight car up ahead. Despite their clashing personalities, they moved almost like twins as they went about their work. It was evident that their training had instilled them with similar priorities.
確認するが、携帯しているのはベレッタと弾倉だけか。
お前こそ銃はそれだけでいいのか？
ああ。戦闘になった場合、迎撃はお前に任せる。今回の私の仕事は暗号破りだ。接続用の PC と護身用に一丁あればいい。
It's definitely Alphard, isn't it? Both of them were going in with a minimal loadout. As a covert agent in the enemy territory, that made Canaan uneasy, but then, if a fight did break out here, the mission was already a partial failure. The organization couldn't spare equipment for a team that only needed it if they fouled things up.
お嬢さん、ルートの確認は？
ルートそのものは問題ない。いいの？これ頭脳労働じゃないよ。
専門外だが、その程度のリスクは多そう。それなりに経験もある。
And the anime music sets in.
お前は乗り物酔いはするタイ
プ？暴れ馬には慣れてるし、動くものから
Oh jeez, don't say this.
あんまりない。
Oh fuck me. Please don't say this. Come on, I need to make a joke about that.
上等。勇ましいね、お嬢さん。では、サーカスの始まりだ。
Damn, she looks nice. I mean, that's a Tommy. The garb that the two girls wore under their cloaks was quite different from the norm for Middle Eastern women. Aside from the fact that one wore red and the other black, the outfits were rather similar. Both of them had dressed for maximum freedom of movement. I mean, what would the Bali have to do with that? But alright, I take it. Definitely, literally.
潜入経路に問題はない。行動を開始する。
With all the casual air of a traveler going for a stroll, and without any hesitation whatsoever, she headed for the outside of the train. No problems with the infiltration route, we're on the move. The call cut out. From here on, the team would retain radio silence except in cases of emergency. As the girl's backup, Siam had to decide on a course of action. He could try making his way through the inside of the train, heading straight towards sequestered freight car. It would make him obvious, but that would at least draw the guard's attention onto him for a time. He had no intention of trying to get into the freight car itself, of course. His goal would be simply to draw the guard's eyes. He could claim to be on his way to meet a friend. The guards would be sure to intercept him and try to usher him away from the freight car. While that was going on, Canaan and Sadaka would hopefully be able to sneak inside. But it seemed that wasn't going to be an option. There were no ordinary passengers in the cars where the guards were posted. If the thing they were protecting was what Siam thought it was, these guards would be good. Any unusual action he took would provoke them and only heighten their alertness. He didn't want to do anything to complicate things for the girls. He decided that his best course of action was just to stay ready in case things went bottoms up. He checked the gun he'd hidden at his feet. Then he pictured in his mind the guards in the nearest compartment, their builds, their gear, their positions. Veteran fighter though he was, he could think of no good way to make up for the sheer difference in numbers. If a fight did break out, it would still be 1 against 7. To break through an enemy position held by soldiers who knew what they were doing, he'd have to completely abandon his own better judgment. He was reminded of a story he'd been told as a student, a fable involving a board game. Life was represented by the board. There was a clear, defined endpoint. One proceeded towards that end, but dire pitfalls had been set up on the way to the goal. It was a valuable lesson. One shouldn't have a goal in life, or rather, one shouldn't think of the end as the goal. The proper way to live one's life was to realize it was already over. One must focus on the moment. This game was striving for the goal, for the end. That was just a way of rushing headlong towards one's death. The priorities were backwards. One shouldn't have a goal in life. One shouldn't seek meaning in oneself. To seek reward. To seek proof that you lived by achieving some hypothetical endpoint. That was a fool's game. Sam's ability to live without hunting for such proofs was one of the very few things on which he prided himself as a mercenary. Slipping his gun out of his hiding place, Siam narrowed his eyes slightly. Until now, he had been a lone soldier, put to use however his employers deemed necessary. He held no tenets, no opinions. He acknowledged that he was an instrument of war. He acknowledged that this was an age where such instruments were necessary. How many battlefields had he passed through? He could see no value in trying to sum up such experience with some complex, ever-shifting philosophy. There were those who would wage war, and those who would try to end it. And tools were necessary for both of those ends. That was all the justification a soldier required. Warriors fought, and then they died. There was no room for anything resembling a normal life. That's who they were. Demons, not men. To Siam, to this mercenary, this was a simple fact. His watch showed that 6 minutes had passed. 24 minutes to go. By then, they would all know if they had failed or succeeded. It was too long and yet too short. A gulf of time for him to fill with his own rusting memories. Another flashback in a flashback? Yes, please. He had been born into an age of enduring conflict. 1948, the first Arab-Israeli war, which started with the declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel. Over 800,000 displaced Arab refugees, Jesus. And conflict between those who had formed their own nation at the end of their wandering, and those who would now never be able to return to those lands. Wait, what year is this? He's that old? 1956, the tripartite aggression over the Suez Canal. Any attempts at negotiation or diplomacy were ineffective. The Middle Eastern hegemony shifted into the hands of two nations, further deepening the turmoil. And then 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed to retake its founder's rightful homeland, his homeland. 4 years prior, he'd been born in a region west of the Jordan River. Okay, so he was born in 1960. Okay, this would make him 40-something years old at the point in time of the story. Like the other young men of faith who had thrown themselves into the liberation movement, he too had chosen a path of belief. But his beliefs were too rigid, too severe. He did not know or value compromise. He'd learned to focus on what he could accomplish as a soldier and strove to become one of the elite in order to end the fighting as soon as possible. He'd believed that this was the very best that he could do. The organization he joined in his teens was small, but it had affiliated itself with the PLO and then joined up with Colonel Gaddafi's camp, which had provided its members the necessary soldier's education. The former supreme leader of Libya, seizing power in a 1969 coup d'etat, he's perhaps best known for his radical anti-Western rhetoric during the 1970s and 1980s, as well as rumored backing of various terrorist groups. In the latter part of his life, his relationship with the West gradually improved. He played a leadership role in the formation of the African Union in 2002, becoming its chairman in 2009. Gaddafi was deposed and killed in 2011 by rebel forces in the Libyan civil war. Has it really been that long? Jesus, it feels like it was yesterday to me. Infighting, however, gradually reduced the organization's numbers. He'd used the 82 Lebanon War as his opportunity to temporarily distance himself from the PLO and had thrown himself instead into the fighting in Afghanistan. That was when he'd acquired the name Siam. He'd acted as a military instructor for Islamic volunteer soldiers from Thailand. His students had bestowed upon him the former name of their kingdom. Oh, okay. A new name. And when he accepted his new moniker, something that represented something other than himself, he had ceased to be the young man who'd sacrificed himself for his ideals. At the request of some former acquaintances, he'd returned to the PLO in 1990. Yet again, infighting had brought the organization to the brink of collapse, and he'd been tasked with helping to restructure it. It was around then that he'd reached his current standing. The sub-organization that he belonged to was in dire financial straits, and so to keep it solvent, its members had begun taking on mercenary contracts for covert ops from the PLO and Islamic extremist groups that were former affiliates. He'd been a soldier for over 30 years, though all that time he had fought and he had survived. The fighting had honed him on every level. Much of it had been purely mercenary, to secure funding to keep his organization afloat, but he recognized it as being meaningful in its own way. In order to tip the balance in the fighting within their own country, his compatriots needed to encourage other nations to go for each other's throats. Accepting this as the evil that it was, he continued to wield the hammer of justice. Eventually, he had seen so much that he had no longer felt the evil, and then he no longer even felt the justice. Ever the consummate soldier, he was too grounded in harsh reality to deceive himself with flowery words or abstract ideas. Everything that he truly understood, he'd come to realize while on the battlefield. And one thing had become completely clear: the fighting that raged through his homeland would not end during the lifetimes of his generation. His own existence was nothing more than a blip on the battle radar, a tiny detail in the midst of something vastly larger than himself. Bit by bit, his once rigid faith gave way to something more nihilistic. Times changed, and so did values. At some point, the human heart went on to change as well. His changed convictions left him alienated, and he reformed himself into a solitary soldier. He longed for battle, yet felt no commitment to any particular conflict. And so, despite his legendary record in uniform, he became a mercenary outside the military establishment. His compatriots began to view him as nothing but a warmonger who fought without beliefs, and they were not so far from wrong. No longer a true partisan of any cause, what he was much harder to define. Ultimately, he was a jack of all trades. Recruit training, guarding VIPs, intelligence operations, subversive activities, he tickled them all. One thing led to another, until he arrived at the last major job he'd undertaken as a soldier. The theater was the Iraq War. There was a battle on the fringes, unrelated to the main conflict itself. And there he'd found a girl who had lost everything, her kin and community, all victims of collateral damage. The tragedy that struck her had unfolded in a single day. When Siam found her, a chance discovery as he was making his way through the area, it was a miracle that she was even breathing. According to reports, the entire population of the village had been annihilated. Friend or foe, there were no possible survivors, and yet Siam had found one. He had taken on this war, and that included aiding any civilians once the fighting was over, even if he knew it was someone unlikely to last much longer than another day. And yet, in defiance of his expectations, the girl clung desperately to life. She pulled herself back from the brink of death, pieced her broken psyche back together, and declared that she wanted to live. Easier said than done. This child had no relatives, and all records of her family had been wiped out. In order for her to live, she would need to be reborn as a soldier.
素人を鍛えられるほど気の長い奴はここにはいない。適任ではないが、お前には俺がつくことになった。
Perhaps because something fascinated him about this new responsibility, he took on the task. To say that the girl wasn't soldier material would have been an understatement. On a scale of 1 to 10, she was less than a 0. Her personality was an issue. She was whimsical, unable to keep her emotions in check, and incapable of working as a part of a cohesive unit. Her general knowledge and awareness of local customs were also sadly lacking. She could read and write, but there was something fundamentally broken about how she processed information. She called the sun blue. At first, Sam figured that she'd simply been taught the word blue to refer to what most people acknowledged as yellow. It wasn't long before he was disabused of this notion. The girl wasn't wrong. Everyone else was. The things she said weren't untrue from her perspective. To her, the sun did look blue. She was still able to distinguish the color yellow from the color blue the same as anyone else. But she had a very peculiar condition, very rare, but known to humankind for centuries. Synesthesia. She was just like us, except in how she perceived the world. Words would come to her as shapes, sounds as smells, moods as colors. Okay, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier, right? So it has its own fucking condition. It's not just a sub thingy of autism or something. That's interesting. I'm gonna look this up. It had isolated her within her own village, and thereby saved her life. That isolation was also why she had no initial aptitude for soldiering. She struggled to work within an organization, as those around her struggled to understand how she operated in a group environment. Siam had no doubt she was the only soldier he'd ever trained who could make eye contact with another person and instantly understand where they fell short and what she could do to make up for it. Running her in a standard squad was almost impossibly difficult. Siam soon found that he often needed to give his new novice his undivided attention.
まだ銃が怖いのか?
In terms of trained reactions and physical skills, there was nothing more that he could teach her. She'd mastered shooting and all the fundamentals of his standard physical training. And yet, she was still an astoundingly timid girl. I'm sorry. That was 2 years ago? She reached to his fucking groin 2 years ago? That doesn't make any sense, seriously. Afraid of the battlefield, afraid of guns, afraid of the trigger. She even seemed afraid of loading a magazine. Every day Siam found himself thinking she wasn't cut out for this. But every day she threw herself back into the training, facing all the things she feared. Revenge, began to suspect. No doubt she wanted the ability to fight so that she could strike back at the nameless bunch who had taken her village and her family away from her. She wants to be like me, Siam thought. She wanted to kill. No, she wanted the strength to be able to kill, and then immediately to put that killing behind her.
その必要はない。死が怖いのはお前が安全を知っているからだ。恐怖は残しておけ。過去は克服しなければならないが、この世には安全があることも忘れてはならない。
She was still a respectable human being, not a soldier. He and she were cut from different cloth. Realizing that made him wonder if there was anything he could truly teach her.
当たり前のことを守れ。射撃の基本はそれだけだ。有効射程外からは撃つな。先に引き金を引け。相手から当たらない場所から当てろ。以上だ。覚えるのは簡単だが行うのは難しい。自分なりに工夫しろ。それともう一つ。交戦したのなら必ず相手の息の根は止めておけ。
She wanted it, that much was clear. And while she might never make much of a rank-and-file soldier, there were better things for her to do than learn regulations and squad tactics. She could survive best on her own. Away from the conventional battlefield, she began to achieve startling results on extreme solo missions. The more skilled her opponent, the more she rose to the challenge. She was a natural-born duelist. No, that wasn't quite right. The girl was an assassin. Siam had to admit that she improved each and every day. The almost daily change of pace was good for him, too, as a teacher. The only problem was the source of the motivation.
お前はまだ復讐を考えているな。
She fell into a typical silent silence, a scolded child, unwilling to tell a lie. Inwardly, Siam acknowledged his misstep in judgment. She might have the makings of the perfect assassin, but the assassin's life would never be a good fit for her.
それはいい。復讐は忘れるな。一族の恥辱は注げ。だがそれはやるべきことの一つであって、全てではない。同じことをするだけの機会にはなるな。憎悪に身を任せるのはたやすいが、それでは生きる屍になる。
Maybe there were no more physical skills to teach her, but he still needed to give this girl the mental training a warrior required to survive.
覚えておけ。憎しみに憎しみで当たっては意味がない。カナン。憎しみには義務で当たらなければ救われない。
That lesson, more an admonishment, was the one thing he'd held onto in the wake of his own disillusionment. His heart bore scars that would never heal. Revenge was a prize without reward, claiming it could break you if your heart was made of anything less than steel. And so he told her to harden her heart into something that could not be broken. He only hoped it was enough. Even steel wore away over time, bit by bit. A year had passed since then. A year that felt like a day. Now one thing in particular rose in his mind. Before this job, for perhaps the first time ever, Canaan had asked him for something. She wanted a tattoo just like his. He'd had no choice but to agree. There had still been one day to go before the job, so they'd gotten it done on location before boarding the train. The tattoo, a snake, represented bad luck and loneliness to the locals. She didn't care. She saw it in a kindred spirit, a creature driven by the same nothingness that fueled herself and Siam. The timid girl and the black snake. If he gave himself over to sentiment, he might have said that the black snake looked somewhat uncomfortable there, coiled on this arm of this girl bent on survival.